Welcome to the Vibrant Life podcast. This is the official podcast of the Vibrant Life community. And I'm Sarah Nolan, and I'm here with Carolyn Gialamas, who is the founder of her company, Parent Care Compass. And she has been in business for over 13 years and has been a caregiver of her elderly father the past 8 years. And she has got an incredible wealth of knowledge and wisdom about caring for, elderly parents, but also caring for any loved ones, and also taking care of yourself at the same time so that you don't get burnt out. You keep your energy, you keep your vitality, your motivation and inspiration, and all of that while being that caregiver. So thank you so much for being here, Carolyn. I'm really excited to have you here sharing this with us today.
Thank you, Sarah, for inviting me to be on your podcast and share with your listeners. I really appreciate the opportunity to bring some wisdom and maybe some inspiration for people who are on the tough journey of caregiving.
Absolutely. Thank you. So can you share with us what your journey was like as a caregiver for your father?
Absolutely. So I was thrust into it very unexpectedly. I had lived in California and my dad had lived out of state for 17 years. I never expected to suddenly become the caregiver for my dad. My dad and I were always really close. We talked every week. And I always made sure that my husband and our sons always went to visit him where he was. We saw him on a, consistent basis, and we're always connected, but it certainly wasn't the same as having him in person. And back in 2011, I had my own small business and was actively doing that, raising our sons. And my dad was supposed to come for a visit over the holidays and had said, he was going to come for all the holidays. That was like spanning from Thanksgiving to after New Year's, which I thought, wow, that's unusual. Usually he'll only come for a week at a time. And just before he came, my cousin was driving him out so he'd have his car and everything. My cousin called me and said, I don't think your dad's planning on going home. And I was like, what do you mean? And he said, I arrived here to drive your dad out to you, and he's got boxes packed in the back of his truck. And I was like, oh my gosh. So I call my dad and I say, Daddy, are you like coming here to see if maybe you want to live here? And he's like, yeah, that's what I was thinking about. And literally he was showing up less than 2 weeks later. And so there we were, my husband and I. Thankfully, my husband is amazing, super supportive, loves my dad, super supportive of me, and was like, your dad can stay with us as long as he needs to. We have a downstairs guest room. And so we initially thought, Daddy's just going to stay with us till he finds his own place. But come to find out, my dad was having a lot of health issues that he hadn't spoken about. And so I think that he thought he probably only had a couple months to go, and he wanted to be with me if it was getting close to the end. And so all of a sudden I start taking him to some great doctors and getting him some really good care. And he got a little renewal in his life. And there we went, almost 8 years of me taking care of him and helping him through the process. And he lived to the ripe old age of 90. He just passed away last August.
Incredible.
Yeah.
So here he was thinking that he may have only had a couple months, which turned into 8 years.
I know.
That reminds me of when my oldest son was first born. He had a very traumatic birth, and they called him the miracle baby. Like, he was not doing well when he was first born, and he couldn't breathe, things like that. And then so we had to be separated because he was in the ICU and I was in, different area.
Recovery. Yeah.
Right. And when I was able to, a couple of days later, come to see him in his room, he almost recovered immediately. And it's just, that shows the power of being with loved ones. It's like, that's why, one thing about the calling him the miracle baby is because miracles happen. Like doctors can't really explain it. It's like, oh, he's with
They
his mother
do.
now. He's suddenly doing better. And so
Yeah.
I wonder if there was an element of that with your dad where it's like, was he living by himself?
He was living with a girlfriend, but they were both older. They
Oh,
both
okay.
had health issues, and they loved on each other, but they didn't advocate for each other's health
Yeah.
wise. And they just, I don't think that they were proactive, or at least he wasn't as proactive with regards to his health. And, there's certain things about him coming to live in our house and being part of our family that he was surrounded with a family. So suddenly it was me, who I've always been very close to him, and my husband and our 2 sons. So he was getting love and attention. My niece, who lives, not that far away, was now coming to visit him on a regular basis. And we have great medical care close by.
Yeah.
And so I immediately hooked into my network. I'm sure, like you, we have a very great community of people that we're connected to. We have awesome relationships with fantastic people, and everybody stepped in to how could they help. A very close family friend was a general practitioner. He stepped in as my dad's primary care physician and got him referred to great doctors. And, suddenly we were getting to the cardiologist, and he was getting a pacemaker. And I mean, just all these different things, but we eat healthy at my house. And so my dad started dropping weight, which made a difference for him. And, there's an environment of health and well-being that he was suddenly immersed in that he didn't have. And I don't fault him in any way. It just wasn't second nature for him. And for us and our family, it was.
And that's, especially as an older person, it can be harder to, depending on the financial situation and everything like that, and just your mobility, it can be hard to maintain a healthy environment, an environment of health. I'm just looking at my grandparents. It takes a lot of work to do that. It takes more work to prepare the meals and
Absolutely.
to find the things, and just to have the knowledge of like what really is going to serve my body the best, versus, if you don't have the energy, then you just do whatever's easiest, and that's okay. But that's so beautiful that you were able to provide a different environment for him, an environment of thriving.
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you. Honestly, it was a privilege to be able to have that extra time with him, to be able to connect on a personal level. I got to know my dad in a way that I'd never known him before, because suddenly our roles were reversed, which is very difficult in many ways. But at the same time, it's like he starts to let his guard down, and he's no longer the parent anymore. And he's sharing a side of himself that doesn't have to be the man who's always in command and control that he had always been. I laugh because I say, 10 years ago, if you had told me that my dad was funny, I would have said no. Like, he has a quip every now and then. But as we suddenly had this role reversal, and he and I had so many heart-to-heart conversations, my dad's funny. I mean, he's funny. And now I'm realizing, this is why he's always had a group of friends and different people that he's been connected with, because he has a certain sense about him. He cares about people, but he also has he comes off with these one-liners and these things that he says because he just speaks what he thinks. And you just have to laugh, because the things that he said and did were just funny. And I have a good time with him. He and I would just laugh about stuff. And I was like, wow, it's so cool that I got to really meet that side of him. And that's why I say there's so many blessings. Even as challenging as that caregiving role is, you have to look for the joy in the journey.
Yeah.
And there is joy in the journey. There's a lot of joy in the journey. And I was able to share a lot of that, that as hard as it was, was also what a blessing it was.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
My dad showing his really vulnerable side and saying things that I just had never experienced from him. Because once again, he was always the hard, tough guy. And, he was the caretaker of the family. And now he wasn't anymore. And so seeing the vulnerable side and seeing him share those moments of insecurity with me and telling me about things that I know his vanity hated having happen as age really took its toll on him. And the fact that he was willing to share those things with me. And sometimes, you know what, we just have to laugh about it because it's all you can do when tough things are happening.
Yeah, absolutely. Sometimes I can imagine in a situation like that, how things might feel very serious all the time, and to just have some fun and find the humor within the situations can really be energizing.
Yeah, it really does help. It helps keep the energy level up of the whole thing, and finding those joyful moments and those things that we could get to do for him or with him, or, having the unexpected things for him. Like, my son who was in the Marines, who would only come home every once in a while, unexpectedly showing up to visit him. And my dad would love that. Or if we were going to be out of town and my Marine son could come up for the weekend, he would show up and visit with my dad. And my dad would tell him stories that he never told me. I mean, there's this one story that my son thankfully had the wherewithal to voice record of my dad talking about how they used to drink beer and have, as he refers to them, pissing contests.
Oh my gosh.
He would never tell me about that, but it was so funny that he would share those stories with his grown grandson,
Yeah, yeah.
Those special moments. And, my dad, he really, as hard as it all was for him, he really tried to stay as upbeat as he could about things, and tried to make it as good as possible, and told me on a very consistent basis how much he appreciated me. And I realize not all caregivers get that. Maybe not everybody's able to verbalize it. Maybe not everybody's willing to verbalize it. But my dad let me know how much he appreciated everything that I did for him. And that helped a lot. I think that helped me in being able to keep my own energy level up as it was difficult. Because there's a lot of things I could do for myself, but those little pieces of feedback. And so maybe even if somebody is having someone else help them and care for them, it's important that you let them know you appreciate it, because those words can make a huge difference.
Yeah. That's really important. And I'm curious, what were some of the biggest challenges during that time, caring for your dad over those 8 years?
Balancing it all. And there really is no such thing as balance. I like to use the word harmony. I think harmony is probably more in line with how can we try to make it a beautiful symphony as much as possible, because I'm sandwiched. Raising my two sons at the time, when my dad moved in with us, my youngest son was 9 and my oldest son was 13. And so I was in the throes of raising those boys. And all of a sudden you throw my dad in the mix. And I hate to say it, but it's true. Sometimes the older one becomes the toddler. And so it's like you would have these little battles that would go on between the boys and my dad. And I was the referee in the middle of it. That was definitely challenging, because whose side do you take? Because there really was no side to take. But at the same time, I felt like, I'd have to be protective of my kids, as my dad would sometimes be very verbose, over the top with them. And sometimes he shared stories that I didn't necessarily want my boys to hear yet. So there was sometimes those challenges. And because I was sandwiched, there were times where I felt like the sandwich was really falling apart. And, one piece of the bread was getting left off somewhere. And I felt like I wasn't able to keep everything together the way that it should have, which is my own self-inflicted perfectionism. I definitely, find, and I think it's more of a woman thing, but we seem to put guilt on ourselves regardless of what we do.
Mm-hmm.
And so having to recenter myself from that and remind myself that I was doing the best that I could, and that sometimes, yes, I'd have to at the last minute call someone to please go pick my kids up from school because I'm stuck at a doctor's appointment with my dad that's taking way longer than I expected, and trying to, message my children saying, I'm sorry, I know I didn't show up to pick you up. But, you do it. When my dad would suddenly go into the hospital under an emergency and we thought he wasn't going to make it. And same thing, like I have to figure out how am I going to make sure that my kids get taken care of while I'm standing guard with my dad at the hospital and juggling all of that. And you juggle on the fly. But I tell you, your community of people and asking for help, this is huge for everyone. Asking for help is the best thing that you can do. And you will find that your friends, family, and those people who care about you, they want to help, but they don't know how unless you specifically ask. I was so grateful for the people who would step in and offer something specific. The friend who said, I've picked your kids up. We're going by your house and getting clothes for them. Don't worry about them. I'll get them back and forth to school, and I'll make sure that their homework and everything is taken care of. You don't need to worry about them. And my other friend who called and said, I know you've been sitting at the hospital all day. I'm stopping at such and such restaurant. I'm going to pick up something. What would you like me to bring to you? Not do you want me to bring you something? Tell me what I'm going to bring to you, because I'm going to bring something to you to eat. And coming in and sitting with me when my dad is essentially, in a comatose state at the time, and I'm sitting there by myself. Having somebody just come and be, oh, what a blessing. So your community of people that you surround yourself with, and knowing who are the people that you can call on and giving them specific tasks that can help you, can make a huge world of difference. Massive.
Yeah. What kinds of things did you put on that list for yourself? Or what kinds of things did you find yourself reaching out for help with?
So being able to bring me stuff at the hospital. So I actually got to the point where I kind of had like my hospital go bag. I know that sounds crazy, but there are things like you need your phone charger, you need a book, you need a blanket because sometimes it's very cold in the hospital rooms. Whatever else to keep yourself occupied. If you're in the middle of a work project, whatever those things are that you can quickly grab and go. Having somebody who can take care of your kids and manage that for you was extremely helpful, because at the time that this originally all started, my husband was still traveling quite a bit for work. And so one time when my dad went into the hospital and it was really bad right away, my husband was across the country. And no fault of his, just the way that it all turned out. But, this is where my friends and loved ones stepped in and, like I said, brought me food, took care of my kids, and just being there on a moral support level to make sure that what needed to could get taken care of. I had to call clients and cancel and reschedule. I had somebody that I had as the business associate that stepped in and handled business stuff for me, interacting with clients on my behalf.
So Carolyn, you realized the importance of having your support system, your community. Was there anything that led up to that where you realized how important that was, or did you know it from the beginning? Like, what was the thing that made you realize the importance of that community?
So I always knew that relationships were important, and people are always a key factor for me. That's like my comfort zone. But I didn't realize the level of where that would go when I suddenly was taking care of my dad. My community became so important, and not only from providing resources for my dad, you know, in terms of doctors and opticians and dental hygienists. I mean, all these people that I'd known for all these years suddenly started being the people that I came to for resources for my dad and could count on. But then my community supporting me through this process of being able to take over with helping my clients, to taking over with making sure that my kids got where they needed to for school and got what they needed to taken care of, and making sure that I had what I needed while I was sitting in the hospital. And, you know, whether that's just coming to be with me, because a person being with you is a huge support, even if they're not even saying anything. Just their physical presence shows a level of care that just feels so good in your heart when you're going through a tough time. And especially as you're going through, in this case, you know, my dad we joke about him having more than 9 lives, because there were so many times that we thought my dad was going to pass away and he didn't. So we had so many times that we were like, this is it. And so you get into this anticipatory grief, and you go through this process of the 5 stages of grieving. And while you're in that 5 stages of grieving, it's not actually happening. Which is weird, but you're anticipating it happening. And so you're in the, you know, denial, no, he's not going to pass away. And then you're in the anger of like, I don't want to lose my dad. And then you're bargaining, and then you have sadness, and then your acceptance. And then all of a sudden he rebounds, which I was always grateful for. But, you know, it's like the cycle of emotions that go on with all of that. And, you know, the control is in the acceptance of it all. That's where the power comes from. And I was advocating for my dad all the time. That was like a constant for me, and making sure that he knew that I was there for him no matter what. And I have to say, the blessing in that is when he did actually pass away last August, I had no regrets. I knew, like, I had done everything I could to make his life and his quality of life as good as I could make it. And it was time for him to move on. And I had my own time to process that, thankfully, with some getaways and stuff that had let me mentally process the fact that my dad's going to pass away and I have to move on through that. It's part of the journey. But, you know, we journey through it. We journey through it.
Exactly. And what are some of the most important steps? I know you mentioned tapping into your community. What are some other steps people can take if they're in the position of caring for somebody, especially sick or an elderly family member, to make sure that they keep their energy, they keep their emotional health strong, their physical health strong? What are some of those things that you recommend to your clients?
It's a great question, Sarah, because it's so important. So self-care is not just important, it's an absolute necessity. It's so necessary in order for you to take care of others, that you take care of yourself. And I'll liken it to a light bulb. If you leave a light bulb on all the time, it will eventually burn out and it won't work anymore, and it can't illuminate.
I love that.
Thank you. It's super important that you recharge your own light bulb in order for you to bring the light and brightness and capabilities to love on the people that you're caring for. So, gosh, there's like multiple categories that I want to talk about with regards to self-care, but I just thought it was so important for people to relate the fact that it's not just important, it's necessary, absolutely, positively necessary. Because you don't want the light bulb to burn out. It's useless it's of no use at all if it's burned out.
Right. And I feel like that's especially helpful for people to hear who feel the guilt of taking care of themselves, especially when somebody is sick, in the hospital, and they feel guilty taking time for themselves.
Yeah, so that's why I use that analogy, because I think that really resonates for us, that we get it. Like, if you let it burn out, it doesn't turn on anymore, and then it's of no use to anyone.
Right.
So we need to make sure that we keep our own light stoked, our own fire stoked. And so there's multiple ways that we can do that. There's the physical arena, eat well, treat your body well, hydrate well, just keeping your body in good shape, move your body every day, whether that's going out for a walk. And nature is very healing. Nature is like God's medicine for the soul. So getting outdoors can make a huge difference. Go for a walk, go for a hike, go for a bike ride, but moving your body. That I'm trying to think, there's a saying about, when you move your body, like it keeps your energy level higher. And so I just think that that's a huge piece. And some people are like, well, I can't find the time. Well, you have to make the time, because it's going to make you more effective. Even if it's just 20 or 30 minutes. And my gosh, if you can't get 20 or 30 minutes, get 10. Do a little stretching, do a short little yoga routine. I say to everyone, YouTube is your friend. You can pull up, as long as whatever time period you have, you can look up 10-minute stretching routine, 10-minute yoga routine, 10-minute cardio workout. I mean, everything is there at our fingertips and accessible for us, and it's free. The majority of everything that we can do for self-care is free. So it's really about taking the time and putting the effort towards it. So I was talking about physical sleep is important. Yeah. Getting good sleep is important. It's ideal if you can get 7 or more hours a night. I realize that's not always possible, but getting yourself with a bedtime routine that helps you wind down and gets your mind to settle down. Because I know I'm an A-type personality. This mind of mine just goes and goes and goes. And I have to actually settle it down. I have my own little routine that I do, but trying to stay off technology for a while before bed. I don't eat for hours before I go to sleep, because I don't want my stomach to be, working on digestion. I want it to be already settled and ready to settle down, and making sure that I hydrate well all day and up into the evening before I go to bed. For me personally, I like to read just a little bit before I go to bed. I have a routine for washing my face, because even that, just the process of washing your face and touching your own face is like giving yourself a little massage and giving yourself some love and, releasing some toxins. But, there's different kinds of things that you can do in terms of, what do you want to have for your bedtime routine, but getting good sleep is really important. I personally like to take supplements. They help support my body. I find that that's very helpful in keeping my own immune system strong and keeping me feeling at my best. So that's all part of the physical arena, areas that you can do to do well. There's also the mental areas. Meditation is helpful. It's something new that I've had to learn. Because getting that mind to settle down, being consistent about journaling and gratitude, writing down things that I'm grateful for. I start my morning with things that I'm grateful for, and I end my night with journaling things that I'm grateful for. Because when we're in appreciation, it's hard to get too mired down in the doldrums.
Right.
And it's easy to throw ourselves a pity party but that doesn't accomplish anything for anyone.
Mm-hmm.
And so you can take that moment to step back and feel sorry for yourself, but don't let it be more than a moment or two, because it pulls you down, and then you're not lighting up what you need, and getting into the present of what you need to get through that journey for your loved one. Emotional stuff, time with friends. Sometimes if you can't see them in person, then a phone call is great.
Yeah.
It's amazing what a short little phone call with someone that you can laugh or share or vent with, just to be able to get it off your chest. Finding great experiences, if that's, going to see a live show, or just going to a movie, or going out and playing a sport or a game with your kids. Less social media for a while. I found myself scaled back some on that, because I found that I needed to disconnect, that was helpful for me. Setting small goals, like getting something done every day, sometimes can give yourself a sense of great accomplishment. So even setting small goals, that helps from the emotional level, that you feel like you're still moving forward in your own life, because sometimes you feel like you've put your life on hold.
Right.
And so because you feel that way, setting goals for yourself to achieve that you still feel like, okay, I'm getting somewhere. I'm still moving forward. That can be really helpful. And accept help when it's offered.
That can be the hardest one too.
I know. That's why I'm saying it repeatedly. And then spiritual. For me, prayer is an important piece. I start my morning with prayer, and that helps ground me. It helps give me a place to feel like I have support that's above and beyond myself and above and beyond this world. So that I find very helpful. And keying in, listening to good podcasts, being involved with great communities like the Vibrant Life community. You have to find places that you can anchor in and feel like you're learning and expanding and growing, even when it seems like you don't have a lot of time to do that. But good groups to belong to, where you feel loved and supported, and great new content. That's podcasts are wonderful. Books on tape. I use some library apps that are free that you can listen to audiobooks or read books, which was also handy when you're in the hospital or sitting by your loved one's side. There's so many different areas that we just don't necessarily think about. Now, if you've got a little extra time and money, gosh, it's so great if you can get a massage or a facial and do some self-care like that. But if that's not on the agenda because it's not in your financial picture, even have your significant other do massages for each other. There are ways that you can do it where you don't have to go out and spend money.
Yeah.
But a spa day is wonderful. A retreat is wonderful.
Carolyn, this is such a wonderful list of ways people can take care of themselves. And I would encourage the viewers and listeners to go back to this periodically, save the podcast on your phone or on your computer, come back to this, once a month, maybe even more frequently, just to remind yourself, because I know when you're in the thick of it, when you're in the throes, you can really forget these things. And as you're talking about all of these ways to care for yourself, it reminds me of a new mom or a new dad, where you have this brand new baby that it disrupts everything. It shakes everything up. And you suddenly, have more demands on your life that you're not used to. And it sounds like this could apply to new parents, people who have a spouse who is either mentally, physically or emotionally sick. Anytime you're in a situation where you are potentially putting somebody else before your own needs, and to stay energized in that process.
Absolutely. It's good for anyone. We all need self-care.
Exactly.
Whether we're taking care of someone else or not, but especially when we're taking care of someone else, to keep those lights shining bright.
Exactly. Thank you so much for sharing that. So for the folks listening today who are, they're running businesses, they're raising families, and all of a sudden they're also caring for a loved one, and they want to prevent the burnout, or they want to get themselves out of that burnout. You mentioned you have your company, the Parent Care Compass. Can you just briefly explain what that is and how people can get a hold of you to take advantage of that service?
Yes, so this is going to be a whole new embarkment that I am partnering with someone who has fabulous professional background in the senior care and gerontology arena. And I, of course, have been the person who's been boots on the ground in the emotional throes of it and the physical caregiving that has gone on. And so I think that she and I make a perfect partnership for supporting others on this journey. We're going to be offering content and community for people, giving them great interviews, resources, as well as guidance, answering questions, giving support. And most importantly is that sense of community, because having other people who are in the same experience, you don't feel like you're alone on this journey, because at the time that you first embark on it, for most of us, it's like something we get thrown into. It's not anything that anyone really foresees. What happens for a lot of people is, a parent falls and breaks their hip or something, and suddenly life changes dramatically. And it happens like that.
Yeah.
And because it happens like that, people are like, oh my gosh, you don't know what you don't know. You're suddenly in it. And so having somebody who's already been on that journey to help guide the way, to light the path for you, to give you support and give you resources and help teach you some of the things that you don't know, and give you tips and tools to save you time, to save you money, to keep your sanity, because sometimes it feels like you're losing it. And you don't know where to turn. You don't know what the answers are. Your parent is being difficult. Everybody's experiences are different, but they're similar in various ways as well. So we are creating Parent Care Compass.
Oh, your sound went out.
Oh.
Okay.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay, so weird. So anyway, Parent Care Compass is a website, so parentcarecompass.com, and just like it sounds, Parent Care Compass. And we'll be having that set up soon, where we'll be offering webinars and some free information for people, as well as a subscription-based service for people who want to partake in regular information and content. And we will grow it as our community tells us what they need. We're going to be there to support them.
That sounds amazing. This is an incredible resource, Carolyn. Thank you so much for sharing this. And for watchers and listeners, really take advantage of this. You're worth it. You deserve to have that energy, that peace of mind, that community, the support. You deserve all of that. And this is a resource that can help you. As of the date that we're recording this, the website's not quite ready yet, but it's all there, and it's just as it is ready, then as I'm saying this, Carolyn, can they get on a waiting list? Can they reach out to you ahead of time and let you know that they're interested?
That would be great, Sarah. That would be great. So why don't we have them connect with me on social media?
That sounds great. So
that they can message me.
Yeah. So Carolyn Gialamas on Facebook, and I'll have her name in the notes here so that you can go find her, and just let her know that you're interested, and let her know your takeaways from our podcast today too. All right.
Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome. So Carolyn, thank you so much for joining us today, and thank you everybody for tuning in today. We really value and appreciate your time and energy. We look forward to seeing you next time.
Thank you, Sarah.